Chapter 31, The Ball. Had gathered then her beauty and her chivalry, and bright the lamp shone over fair women and brave men. 1,000 hearts beat happily, and when music arose with its voluptuous swell, soft eyes looked love to eyes which spake again, and all went merry as a marriage bell. Childe Harold, Canto 3. On the following day, the festivities, which had been temporarily suspended, were resumed. The princess had quite recovered from the shock and received the congratulations of her friends. The role I had played was the theme of a play. The duke and prince, notwithstanding my remonstrances, had determined to make my part in the drama a subject of ovation, and I was compelled to sustain the ordeal of a court reception. This concluded, we prepared to witness the races and entered the grounds a short distance from the villa. It was a great circular amphitheatre, 3 miles in circumference, surrounded with commodious stands hung with awnings and seating many thousand spectators. 200 racers entered the field, mounted, not by professional jockeys, that profession being quite unknown in Martian equestrianism, but generally by their owners, young men and ladies, the majority of whom were of high rank. Altafurna's favorite, Krishna, was ridden by one of his friends. Ivan Aruna, the snow-white steed of the princess, was mounted by Luzella, who was second only to her in equestrian skill. The first courses were led by the young men. The speed of the horses was tremendous, but in every heat Krishna distanced all the competitors. Second was led by the equestrianesses, attired in appropriate costumes, and altogether many of the racers surpassed their previous records. Ivan Aruna was victorious. To my surprise, the most important elements in racing business, in our terrestrial point of view, were wanting on this occasion, to wit, betting books, stakes, pool peddlers, piles of money, etc. Such a thing as betting on the speed of a horse is quite unknown among Martian equestrians, in which respect they would of course be regarded as quite behind the times by our terrestrial sporting circles, and their races as very stupid and uninteresting affairs. The races closed with a grand cavalcade. 1,000 young ladies and men were mounted on splendidly caparisoned steeds. In this the princess and Altafora joined. She was attired in superb riding habit, the gift of Thaloba, royal purple velvet embroidered with gold, and a hat to correspond. The pageant was magnificent. They swept around the arena in solid phalanxes, every horse head to head in accurate lines. The princess and Selima and Luzella, with their coteries of young maidens, all on snow-white steeds, leading the van. The preparations for the ball had been arranged on a scale of elaborate magnificence, and many of the crowned heads of Martian kingdoms who were to honor the festival with their presence were arriving with their suites in fleets of airships and chariots, some from countries far distant, and were escorted to the royal pavilions and apartments to the chateau assigned to them. The grand salle de bal of the villa was an immense elliptical amphitheatre capable of accommodating several thousand guests. Its magnificence and beauty almost defy description. Its walls consist of triple rows of lofty columns of different colored marbles sweeping around the whole circumference and supporting on their capitals a splendidly carved entablature from which ascends a vast dome of sky-blue crystal. Between the columns were flowering trees, plants, and ferns, amid whose luxuriant foliage gleamed marble statues and fountains of all imaginable forms and colors, unspringing from the mouths of carved dolphins and sunfishes, and falling in glittering showers in marble layers. The floor of the arena was paved in mosaic, and surrounded by a broad platform elevated one step above it, and on which were rows of seats and divans for the guests. The vast concavium of the dome, the cornices of the entablature, and capitals of the columns were draped with gorgeous banners and festoons of flowers. At regular intervals among the columns were open portals decorated with flowering vines and hung with curtains. They were the entrances for the guests and communicated through leafy colonnades with the private pavilions surrounding the amphitheatre. Seven of these portals, loftier and more richly decorated than the others, were surmounted with the royal coats of arms and emblazoned standards of the seven magnificent Martian kings and dukes royal. The amphitheatrum was brilliantly illuminated with countless globes of many-colored lights, gleaming amid the gorgeous drapery of the dome. As we entered, a panorama of wondrous beauty and splendor was displayed. The surrounding platform was occupied by thousands of elegantly attired ladies and gentlemen comprising the elite of the different races of the Martian kingdoms, and all along the brilliant circle, the glittering sheen of superb toilettes mingled with the flashing coruscations of countless gems was like the vast and gorgeous rainbow brought down from the skies. Amid the cheering strains of pastoral music from a concealed orchestra, throngs of little children attired as Cupids, Psyches, and Floras issued from the leafy portals, singing songs of welcome, flinging showers of dewy odor from their gauzy wings, and strewing the platforms with flowers from their cornucopias. Following these came bands of Euterpruses and Molopontes, playing on harps, lutes, and citharans, their full and melodious voices mingling with the songs of the children, while throngs of fairies, peries, elves, and terpsichores assembled in the arena, mingling in the bewildering mazes of fantastical and beautiful dances. 'Twas like a scene from fairyland. And now the loud fanfare of trumpets, the roll of drums, and the clash of cymbals resounded through the hall. The flower-bearers, singers, and dancers flitted back among the trees and fountains. The veils of the seven royal portals were raised, and the beauty and chivalry of seven mighty Martian kingdoms poured into the arena in streams of dazzling splendor. The magnificence of the scene was truly beyond description. The array of gorgeous robes, decorations, the glittering arms and uniforms, the jeweled helmets and coronets, the flashing crowns and tiaras was like the superb Miltonic picture of the marshaled celestial hosts along the battlement of heaven. The grand national anthem of Mandal Ultima rolled in mighty waves of harmony through the amphitheatrum. As the royal suites marched in solid phalanxes over the arena, the national anthem of each kingdom was played, the national character of each being expressed in the different themes. Some were cheerful and joyous, others were stately and majestic. The strains of some were pathetic and mournful, while others resounded with a wild, barbaric, and even savage clangor. No such martial music was ever heard on earth. It was like the mighty and resistless tread of innumerable armies. The grand entree concluded, they assembled on the platform under their respective portals, receiving the salutations of the guests, while the music sank to soft and delicate measures, mingling with the subdued hum of conversation. Beneath the portals, crowned with the royal crests and standards of Mandal Ultima, the Princess Sulima stood leaning on the arm of Duke Athalon, with Luzella, Thaloba, and Altiphora in his splendid uniform by her side. She was surrounded by the court ladies and maidens of her suite, cabinet officers, nobles, peers, and distinguished personages of both sexes, all in magnificent costumes. Duke Onagar, his royal officers, and suite were gathered under the adjoining portals, crowned with the coat of arms and standards of Raj Vohandra. A description of a ball or reception, its appointments, decorations, etc., with no description of dresses to match, might justly be regarded by many of our fashionable dames, with whom that subject is of such vital importance, as a very crude and unfinished sort of affair, like the play of Hamlet, with the part of Hamlet left out. But had a posse of our fashionable society reporters, whose business 'tis to observe and chronicle the petticoat department of our haut ton, been present on this occasion, aided by the most skilled corps of fashionable female milliners and upholsterers, yclept modistes, whose sceptre sway so many million female hearts, they would have been utterly overwhelmed by the magnitude of the task, and the modistes themselves would probably have gone insane over what they could not comprehend, much less describe. The toilettes of the Princesses, court ladies, etc., of the different kingdoms were composed of materials unknown on earth, immeasurably surpassing in elegance and beauty anything of the kind seen in our most splendid court receptions of recherche aristocratic crushes. What we terrestrians designate as style, mode, or fashion in dress is quite unknown among Martians. Neither is there any word nor figure of speech to express the idea, if any such idea lurks in the Martian feminine mind. The attires of each and all are in keeping with their race, station, occupation, age, peculiarity of personal appearance, etc., of which latter, the varieties being almost infinite, permit an equal variety in dress and adornment, in accordance with the fancies of the individual, all of which are regulated by perfect taste and elegance. Hence the Martian female heart is quite ignorant and of those manifold anxieties and perplexities, and quite innocent of those heart-burnings, mutual envies, and jealousies, which, in affairs of dress, as well as love, hold such an omnipotent sway over countless millions of our terrestrial feminine hearts. The Prince Selima was attired in what might be described as a close-fitting princess dress, décollage and entrain, showing the exquisite outlines of her form. It was of a nameless hue, faintly luminous, almost phosphorescent, which at every moment or flicker of light threw off the most beautiful play of delicate prismatic tints, like the iridescent opals, or mother of pearl. The outer dress was a perfect transparent crystalline gossamer or illusion of delicate hyacinth hue, decorated on the borders with what seemed gauzy butterfly wings, and every part of it flashed like the rays of the morning sun on new-fallen snow. It enveloped her form like an ethereal cloud, resembling those celestial nebulae amid whose shadowy depths gleamed galaxies of stars. She wore no ornaments save the royal insignia of her rank, one solitary gem, whose resplendent luster rivaled Arcturus as it gleams over midnight skies of Arabia. Her whole appearance was so ethereal and beautiful as elicited expressions of wonder and admiration. In the meantime, bands of fairies, peris, and cupids were passing amongst the guests, distributing the programs of the dances imprinted on little ivory tablets in letters of gold and azure. Conspicuous among the royal portals on the opposite side of the arena towered the lofty standards and decorations of Prince Diovojar, heir apparent of the great kingdom of Sandora Luzium, the most wealthy, powerful, and populous of the 7 Martian monarchies, and comprising the greater part of the southeast hemisphere. His suite numbered 1,000 of high nobles and dignitaries of his realm, and amid the loud blare of trumpets, the roll of drums, and clash of cymbals, they marched in gorgeous array across the arena. The brow of Prince Altafora darkened. He beckoned to the Lord High Chamberlain in who was invested the arrangements of the festivities, and that nobleman stepped quickly forward. "How is this, my Lord Montalbar?" he whispered. "The Prince Diovajar here? His Royal Highness was not invited." "Can it be possible? I crave your Highness's pardon," replied his lordship. "I knew not of it. Having been informed that he was on his way hither with his suite, I directed his pavilions and portals be prepared accordingly." "There is some mistake here," replied the prince, "but there's no time for explanation, and although his visit is an intrusion, we will extend to him all due honor out of courtesy to his unfortunate father, His Majesty Prohibus Hotuzan." The suite now deployed in front of the portals of Mandal Ultima and gave the customary imperial salute. The oriental gorgeousness of their costumes, the glitter of their arms and decorations were like streams of mingled jewels and gold. A man of tall stature, clad in magnificent dress decorated with royal insignia, advanced from the throng. He was apparently about 35 years of age, his bearing haughty, his countenance handsome, but marked with dissipation. Its expression was sinister, displaying arrogance, duplicity, and cruelty. He approached the Grand Duke with a sweeping quasi-obsequious salutation, to which he and the prince responded with suave yet stately dignity. Prince Davijar Hotazan, said Altafora, peace be unto you. Permit me to represent to your Royal Highness our honored guest from Earth, my esteemed friend, Lieutenant Hamilton. His Royal Highness measured me from head to foot with a right royal stare, and deigned to bestow a condescending nod of recognition. As they did not quite overwhelm me, and as I did not feel disposed to toady to royalty on Mars, any more than on Earth, I returned them both with compound interest, as I fancy any officer of Uncle Sam's navy would have done. He now approached the princess, and after a somewhat high-flown shower of compliments, in which the obsequies, seductive glances, wreathed smile, and handsome teeth were conspicuously mingled. Will the bright and glorious star of Mandela Ultima deign to accept the escort of her humble adorer? Offered his royal arm. Excuse me, Prince, replied Selima with the politest of smiles. I have already accepted Lieutenant Hamilton as my escort. Shall do myself the honor to accept that of your Highness later on. Had Prince Divajar possessed the eye of a basilisk, and furtive and malignant glance he cast at me would have turned me into stone. But with a still sweeter smile and bow, he approached the Prince Luzella with the same royal request. Excuse me, your Royal Highness, replied the Hebe, radiating with smiles and dimples, but I prefer the escort of Prince Altafora. Which I am proud to accept, said he, taking Luzella's arm. So our royal cousin must seek a partner from among the many princely beauties here assembled, bowing almost to the ground. A dark and sinister glance shot from the eye of Prince Deovajar, as, with a profound obeisance, he retired with his suite and mingled among the royal throngs of the adjoining platforms. The declination on the part of the two princesses to accept the inaugural escort of Prince Deovajar, heir apparent to the throne of the most powerful Martian kingdoms, created a profound sensation among the surrounding circles, but there was no time for comment. The joyous strains of the orchestra resounded through the amphitheater. The brilliant suites of the seven kingdoms and throngs of guests descended from the platforms assembled on the floor of the arena, and the dances began. They were at first of a stately and ceremonious character, somewhat resembling our old-style minuet and quadrille. Gradually, however, they changed to a livelier measure, until the whole arena presented a most brilliant display of beautiful and graceful Terpsichorean evolutions. It were perhaps needless to say that I deeply appreciated the special honor conferred upon me by the Princess Selima. Nothing could equal the exquisite grace with which she glided through the mazes of the dance. Hers was indeed the very poetry of motion. With her lovely form, angelic countenance, and resplendent eyes, she seemed like a spirit of the air. Her attire gracefully floated around her like the wreathing mists encircling the fountains of Helicon, kissed by the sun's rays, and her feet, gleaming whiter than the mountain sleet, ere from the cloud that gave them birth, they fell and caught one stain of earth.